Oh, yay, we are live. Hey, everybody, welcome to Fran and Fran's. When you see Fran, you already know that it's Friday. And today's podcast, I have a special guest with me, Dr. Somone Washington. As you know, I always love to share bios of just to kind of give you an idea of, the things that we've accomplished in life. So please welcome Dr. Simone. Thank you, the audience there. I don't quite see you, but thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit about her bio, and then we will definitely dive into the conversation. So Dr. Simone Washington is the CEO of Kiasi Technology, where she leverages over 20 years of industry knowledge to create innovative learning solutions. Dr. Washington excels as a public speaker, author, business strategist, and coach. And I lost my place. Dang, I sounded so great. Book development consultant, technology learning facilitator, digital implementation specialist, and award-winning software analyst. Okay, girlfriend. Her inspiring story, professional accomplishments, and ongoing advocacy work reflects her unwavering commitment to making a positive difference in the world. With that said, and now she adds author under her list of accomplishments.
Yes.
Dr. Simone, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Fran. I'm super excited to be here and have this conversation with you. Let's get into it.
Yo, Dr. Simone, when I was at your book launch
Yes.
and I heard you reading that line because I had to use that one line that I heard because it drugged me in. I was like, what did that guy say to her? He said
Yeah.
that I hope you die.
Yeah.
I was like, I hope she had like a syringe next to her to like that. What was this experience like? How did all this come about?
Well, I was a young lady going through a chronic illness, and I was in the hospital. Well, I was in the hospital because I had felt ill, and I was in the hospital for quite a little while, and the doctors were trying to diagnose me and decide on the best treatment options. And so while I was in the hospital, I was visited by the person that I was dating at the time, and I thought he came to support me to see how I was doing and all those things, but he actually came just to ask to borrow my car. And so when I said no, because I knew it wouldn't be a good idea, because he, drank, and I knew that there was a possibility that he could be under the influence while driving my car. So as soon as I told him no, that was his response. Like, it was just such overkill for such a small response, right? So yeah, so that's how we got to that point.
Wow. So, walk us through your journey. Like, how did you how did you find out that you had a chronic illness and what led up to that moment?
Yes, so I was 24 years old. I was living in Miami, Florida, born and raised in Miami, Florida. I had just finished graduate school, so I started a brand new job, and I was doing great. Like, I have a new job, I have my own place, I have my own car, like, really excited about starting my new career. And I was healthy. I was having fun with my friends on the weekends. Just life was great. And then all of a sudden, I fell ill and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And so, since I had just started a new job, I didn't have medical coverage yet because I was on probation. And so, when I was feeling ill, I went to a local clinic just to be seen and to get treatment. And so I was given antibiotics, and I was told that if they don't work, to come back in 2 weeks. Well, they didn't work, and I started feeling worse. And so I went to the hospital instead, the emergency room. And so began the journey of getting diagnosed and going through treatment options. And yes, a long road ahead.
When you heard that news, when they said, whatever they diagnosed you with,
Mm-hmm.
what was your thought at that moment? Like, how did you take it? Like, what was going through your head?
Yes, so my diagnosis was end stage renal failure, which means that my kidneys were failing. They were working together at 10% at the time that I was in the hospital. I didn't really know what to think. And so my immediate thought was, does this mean I'm going to die? Or what do I do with this information? I had no idea. I never heard of it before. I didn't know what it meant outside of my kidneys are failing. So I heard the news, but I didn't really know what to do with the information at first.
So after after it seemed like you were almost in like a shell shock because it you needed time to process, right?
Yes.
Was there a resource of some sort where the maybe the hospital offered you to help learn more about what this was? And then how did you approach that?
Yes. So along with the diagnosis, the doctors did say that the options that I had was that they had a medicine that I could take, but for a certain amount of time. So there were two different medicines, and I could take each one for 1 year period before the benefits or the risk outweighed the benefits. And so that bought me some time. So I was on one medication for a year and then the second medication for another year. And that was the course of action moving forward. But the doctors did say that eventually I would have to start dialysis. I didn't know what dialysis was. It sounded very scary to me. And so I didn't want to think about it. And I just went with the course of action of taking the medicines and just kind of seeing what happens after that.
So, for those that are watching and aren't familiar with end stage renal disease and dialysis, could you give them an idea what dialysis is? And then at 25, finding that out, what was your next course of action afterwards? Because that's a
So,
lot.
yes. So, end stage renal failure means that my kidneys were not working properly. And what the kidneys do is they help the body flush out toxins and they work together with your bladder to just remove the toxins from your body through urination and things like that. And so, if your kidneys aren't working properly, then over time, your body begins to poison itself because you have no way of getting the toxins out. And so dialysis is the process of being attached to a machine that then will cycle your blood out of your body and into the machine to clean your blood to do what the kidneys would do normally if they were working properly. And so because it's flushing blood in and out, it's a very slow process because, as you know, we can't be without a certain amount of blood in our bodies, otherwise, we'll faint. And so, usually, dialysis takes 3 to 4 hours at a time for one treatment. And when you're on dialysis, you usually have to go at least 3 times a week. And so when I first got diagnosed, I didn't know any of this. I didn't want to know. I just ignored it and I just didn't want to deal with it. And so I just stayed on the medicines that I was given until I had to face it.
What was that had to moment?
So it was towards the end of the second year. And my doctor said, we're ending the amount of time where you can be on this medicine before the risk and the side effects are more dangerous, and so we'll have to take you off, and so we'll have to start you on dialysis. So they went through the process of getting me assigned to a dialysis center, which happens to be Davita, which you probably see in the neighborhood as you're driving by, and maybe you don't pay attention because why would you need to? But that was the center that I was assigned to, and I had to do a couple of procedures to prepare to be able to take dialysis treatments. And so I went through that process and eventually started dialysis.
That's so scary. Like, I used to work for a dialysis company, so I'm very familiar with the process.
Hmm.
And having to sit there for 3 to 4 hours, I mean, that's freaking life changing. And for 3 to 4 times a week.
Yes. So I had no social life. Once I started dialysis, I didn't have a social life. So I was still working full time. Um, I did have the option to be deemed disabled, medically disabled,
Hmm.
but I was so young, I didn't want to be deemed medically disabled. Like I was 24, 25 at this point, 26, 27 years old. I didn't want to have that designation and be limited on my income, and just like I was just starting my career, I wanted to still see how well I could do there. So I declined that option. So I was still working full time. And so after work, I would go to dialysis treatments. And so by the end of each treatment, it's 8 o'clock or later at night. And so then I would go home and rest and sleep, and then the next day go to work. And so that was my life for almost 2 years.
I can't imagine. I mean, having to sit there for 3 to 4 hours, I'm assuming that this must be a tiring process on the body.
Well, you're just sitting or laying, in a chair, in a dialysis treatment chair. You can't move much because you're attached to this machine. You could watch TV, you could read. It's pretty boring, especially if you're a young person. Maybe you go to sleep, maybe you eat snacks. You can't go anywhere for 4 hours. So, what do you
Yeah. Yeah. What do you do? Puzzles.
do?
Word search.
With one arm, because one arm is attached to the machine. So whatever you can do with one arm. Yeah,
Ah, okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah.
So, Dr. Simone, how did you get the idea to write the book about your life? I mean, it's an incredible story. It is an incredible story.
Yes. So unfortunately, I lost my dad 2 years ago, and I'm definitely a daddy's girl. And so that was a
Mm.
devastating loss for me. But it also made me realize that I needed to grow up. And even though I'm in my early 40s at this time,
Hold on, Dr. Simone. I just want to make sure everybody out there heard in social media land that Dr. Simone is 40 years old, and I don't believe that.
so I'm not 40, I'm in my 40s, so I'm older than 40.
Well,
And I
nature
know,
has been good to you.
thank you. I know some women like to keep their age a secret, and I understand that. But because I've been through this process, and you know, it could have turned out differently for me, I celebrate every year that there is. And so I say it and scream it from the rooftop like every year that I get to celebrate another birthday. So I share my age. I am 44 years old. I'll be 45 in May, and I'm super excited for it because every year has been a blessing.
Hmm, so wonderful. I mean, yeah, that totally shifts the trajectory once your life has been threatened,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And you kind of take a look at things a bit differently.
yes. So,
Hmm.
as I was saying, I lost my dad a couple years ago, and even though I'm of this beautiful age, it made me realize that I needed to grow up in some ways.
Hmm.
Um, being a daddy's girl and just always knowing that your dad is there to support you, in ways, in those special ways that no one else on the earth will. Like my mom, she loves me and she supports me as well, but being a daddy's girl is just a different thing. And for those of us out there that are daddy's girls, they know what I mean. But with him being gone and just realizing that I needed to grow up a little bit in some areas, one of the things that I had always wanted to do is become an author. And that really motivated me to just sit down and buckle down and write this, because I know that every time that I've ever shared my story with someone, they always say, you should write a book, you should write a book. And so finally, after years and years of hearing that, I was like, you know what? I should probably write a book. And so that became the big motivator to get started.
Wow. Wow. So when you when you actually put pen to paper, what was your idea of what the outcome would look like? What kind of impact did you think that you were going to have, as you started to lay the groundwork for the book?
Well, I always had dialysis patients in my heart for the idea to write this story and share it with the world in this way, because I've been through dialysis treatments before. And for people that have been on it for years, it can be a pretty hopeless place to be. You're waiting for your second chance at life, for a transplant, for your opportunity to just regain your life again. And with every year that passes, it just seems less and less possible. And so I just wanted to offer this as my testimony to other people to see like that this is possible. And so I always had them in mind. When I was going to dialysis treatments, there were people of all ages in my center. So older people, and then there was a young lady who was 18 years old, and she was the youngest person at our center. So I thought I was young, but when I saw her there, 18 years old, it really did break my heart, because I just knew how much my life had been impacted as a young person, and I couldn't imagine as an 18-year-old going through this. And so my heart really went out to her. And so, yeah, dialysis patients has always been at the heart of this project, and I've dedicated the book to people who are currently on dialysis, just hoping to give them just hope and just renewed faith in the process.
So it sounds like that people have to wait a couple of years, or they could be waiting a long time in order for them to get a kidney. That's what they're waiting for, right? Is a kidney donor?
Yes, and some people are, well, people need different types of transplants, but for those of us on dialysis, most of us are waiting for kidneys. Um, and it really just depends on how long. Some people never have to go on dialysis because maybe there was a living donor, someone in their family
Mm.
that donated a kidney. And because we can survive with one kidney, then, that's also a possibility. But for those of us who do not have a living donor, who are waiting on a transplant wait list, it really does depend on a lot of different factors. And so, for one example, I am born and raised on the East Coast. So, all of this was happening in Miami, Florida. And I do know some people here in California who are also waiting. And so, the list is shorter in Florida than California just by sheer population, right? There are more people here. And so, that might factor in how long you have to wait. Other factors include blood type. So if you have a rare blood type or a rarer blood type like O positive, that might impact the length of time that you have to wait. But you just never know. There's no like way to know for sure how long the wait is. It could be really short, it could be longer. It just depends on what becomes available at the time that you're on the wait list.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm sure this is, if it hasn't, and not just for dialysis patients for to give them hope, but like just glimpses of your story. Like I said, when we were inside of your book launch, I
Mhm.
was like, wait, Dr. Simone does not look like what she has went through reading all these different excerpts from the book. So going back to the book, what is one of the most impactful lessons that you've learned coming out of end stage renal disease, and um, just something that you'll always look back on and say, "Wow, if it wasn't for this, this wouldn't happen." And other things.
So, uh, going through a process like this and a situation like this, it is definitely a faith walk. And whatever you believe in, what higher power, creator, uh, I believe in God. I believe that Jesus is our Savior, and He has been pivotal in this process for me. And so when I first started dialysis, um, even though I've always been a faithful person, when I first started dialysis, my faith was nowhere to be found. I was like, what is happening to my life? Why what is going on? Like what is this about? Like am I going to survive? Like what is happening? And I had like really wonderful dialysis nurses that took care of me when I was going through my treatments. And they would always speak life over me. And they were like, oh, you're so young. You have so much life ahead of you. You're going to get your transplant really soon. You're not going to be here long, and all of those positive things. And when they were first speaking over me in this way, I was just like, yeah, whatever, like in my head, because I was just like, I don't know anyone who was going through this. I don't know of anyone that had gone through this. I just didn't know what to expect or what to think, or my mind was all over the place. But over time, with them continuing to speak over me, for people at church and my coworkers who are faith believers, like everyone was always praying for me, speaking positive words over me. And just over the course of time, because their faith was so strong and they were just so confident that there would be a good outcome, that over time it really did help to build my faith to the point where then I was starting to say those things over myself as well. And I was starting to believe those things as well. And then I was saying them also. And so I think the most important thing that came out of this is that your support system and having faithful people around you to speak faith over you, to speak life over you is so important, to pray for you, because sometimes you don't always have your faith built up in those moments. Sometimes your faith is challenged, but having that support system around you to have that faith when you don't have it just helps you build your own faith over time.
I was gonna ask you the question, but you was already in the spirit realm with that one.
Mhm.
I was gonna ask, like, it sounds like the community of faith is what really helped you push through this, in addition to the nurses. Like, what
Yeah.
a wonderful um environment to be surrounded by. Are there any pivotal people that you can also shout out that have been some of those warriors in your life to help you through that transition?
Yes. So the head nurse at the Davita Center that I was at, his name is George White. He was so kind and so wonderful. We also had nurse Marilyn, um, also very full of faith and speaking positively over me. I had my work team, like the women warriors, like they were already like meeting every morning before work as they were having their coffee. They were doing their own Bible studies and worship. And I just happened to come to work super early one day and just kind of stumbled into their sessions, and I was welcomed with open arms. And so they already had that foundation of faith and spirituality. And so they were praying for me. My church family, like at the time I was going to Antioch Missionary Baptist Church of Miami Gardens, and my family there was praying for me, then my own family and my own friends. It was just a big village of people praying for me.
I'm so glad that you had that community to help push you through, because I'm sure that that was something difficult for you to come out. But look, you came out on the other end with a book, and you're sharing your testimony to all these people, and also teaching people what affirmations look like, or what it looks like to speak words and life over yourself. We do have power in that sense to reinforce the faith that it is that we need. And like you said, sometimes when we don't have the faith ourselves, sometimes it needs to be borrowed from others to help push through.
Yes.
So, so for people that want to know more about dialysis, because I know that you mentioned that there's a tissue registry. Could you share with people what that is, and how can people help um, learn more about what end stage renal disease is?
Yes. So uh, the reason why I'm able to be here today to talk with you about this is because there was a family that lost a loved one. He was 18 years old. He lost his life to gun violence, and his family decided to donate. And so that is how I got my kidney at the time that I needed it. But it's a really hard decision to make at the time that you're also finding out that your loved one is passed away. And so, what we like to say is if you know that you would want to be a donor in this way, like when you are 105 years old and you're at the end of your life and you want to pass this gift on to someone else, that you would register as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. And most people have heard about this, doing it at the DMV, registering. But you can also register online. There are several places online to go, including onelegacy.org, where you can register. But we really do want people to consider registering and making the decision for themselves. So at the time, when the time comes, that your family isn't burdened with making the decision because they are in grief at the same time. And so, fortunately for me, this family was, although they were going through the grief of the loss of their loved one, they still made the decision to donate. And that is why I'm here today, just being able to talk to you about it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that resource. Um, so going back to your book, I was wondering, was there a succession of how you wanted to write your book? Because I remember that you said that they came from out of your journals.
Mm-hmm.
At
Yes.
what point did you decide you were going to go in that direction versus writing like a different style?
Well, I'm not a person that does well with blank screens. So whether it is designing websites from scratch or creating a social media page post or writing just that blank page, it doesn't help my creativity. So I have to start with a template. I have to start with something to get me started. So I felt like using my journals was like a cheat sheet of sorts, where my plan was just to write out or type out everything that was in my journal that chronicled this time in my life, because the book it doesn't start from like childhood until now. It really just chronicles a 5-year period from the time that I got diagnosed until 5 years later. And so I really just had the thought of typing out the journal entries that related to this 5-year period, and then kind of go from there and see what happens. And so that's where I started.
Were you surprised at some of the dialogue that you wrote in there? Well, is it dialogue? I guess you're talking to yourself. Were you surprised at what you wrote?
It is dialogue because I'm talking to God, I'm talking to myself. So definitely dialogue. It wasn't, so some of it was surprising because there were some details that I had forgotten about. And I was like, oh yeah, I that did happen, or I did feel that way. Oh my gosh, I hadn't remembered that. And so, yes, just going back through the journal entries, which I think is really, and so I do advocate for people to journal because there's no way that I could have remembered those details all these years later if not for the journal entries.
When did you start journaling?
Oh, I've been journaling maybe since middle school.
Okay.
I've been journaling for a long time. Some of the journals they have been burned, so nobody needs to read that anymore. Some of them, however, were like pages were burned during processes of relief or release, at the beach or as part of therapy. And so yeah, I've been journaling for years and years and years.
What are three things that people should expect when they get into your book?
Well, one of the things that we talked about at the book launch or the book release event is that there are so many people in my life that I've met over the years that have heard parts of my story. There are people that I'm friends with, or even my family members. They know a lot of my story, but no one knows all of the story in the way that I do. And so this book is really the one place that everyone in my circle, people that know me, that we've had conversations, can get the full story. And they can kind of put the puzzle together. It's like, oh, yeah, we talked about this. Oh, I knew about that, but I didn't know about these things. And for people who don't know me, this would be a great way to get to know me in a more intimate way because there are things in this book that no one knows, that I've never shared with anyone, that had only lived in my journal and in my thoughts and in my heart. And now it's being shared here in this book.
How does it feel now that you have put that information out into the world? Are you scared of it, or what's running through your heart? What's running through your mind?
I'm very proud of this project. I think it's a huge accomplishment. There were parts that were very difficult for me to write. And so, a big shout out to my book coach, Dr. Katrina Elliott. She did a wonderful job of coaching me through those hard uh, parts of my life that were really hard for me to write.
And I think she's in the comments too.
Yes, yes. And so once I got through actually writing it, then I became super excited for everyone to read it because I believe that people can resonate with my story in many more ways than I initially intended. Like, I really wanted to write this to be inspirational to people on dialysis, to families that have lost loved ones that have donated, to give them insight on what a second chance at life could look like for someone. But it's so much more than that. There were times where I was low in self esteem and self confidence for various reasons. There were a lot of different ebbs and flow in the story, and I believe that it will resonate with a lot more people and more audiences. So I'm excited for everyone to read it and see parts of themselves in my story and to walk away with inspiration and renewed hope for whatever it is that they're going through.
Well, it looks like Dr. Katrina Elliott just left a comment for you and said, "Love you," and you are very welcome. I'm so proud of you, and it was an honor to be your book coach. I
Awesome.
would
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the layout of the book. I haven't read it all,
Mhm.
but I thought that was really cool that at the end of the chapter, like you have questions. And I don't know if I'm supposed to be spilling the beans.
Go ahead. Spill a little tea. That's what we're here for.
So at the end, you have questions. Okay, hey, how can you see yourself resonated in my story? And I thought, yo, this is so good. It's like a workbook inside, you're helping people to reinforce, where they could possibly see themselves, like you said, within the book. And it's helping other people in a way that you may not have thought of that were going to be reached by the book. It's so inspirational.
Thank you. Thank you. So, yes, so I titled each end of chapter, let's chat about it. And we have questions. And so, the way that I structured the questions is as if I'm asking you the questions because I do want it to feel like we are in conversation about what you just read. And that was important to me because I do want to talk to my readers. I do want to hear what you have to say. I do want to hear what your answers to the questions are. And so, whenever you get the book, please go on Amazon and submit your reviews. I would love to hear what you have to say. Email me. I'm on all social media. I would really love to hear what you have to say about what you've read.
It sounds like a book club might be in order. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you guys out there, if you ladies out there have church family or a girls group or guys group and you guys want to make a book club out of it, I would love to be invited to chat with you about it. That would be awesome. I would love that.
Ah, lucky. So you have so many comments, so I'm going to start one by one here.
Okay,
All right, this first one said, "Thank you for sharing your story. There are definitely people who will benefit from your testimony."
thank
And
you.
then Mo O'Neill said, "This is such a powerful and great share, Dr. Simone."
Thank you.
I love it.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you want to share about your book? Because I'd like to go into our round robin session in a few moments. Oh,
Um, Go ahead.
sorry, Dr. Simone. I'm sorry, you guys. I don't know if I had mentioned, but oh yeah, I did in the beginning. So for those of you that are joining, um, Dr. Simone, she is the owner of Kiasi Technology. Because I feel like some people came in, and I just kind of wanted to give them a backdrop of you.
Okay.
And she's just now adding author to her list of accomplishments. And if you don't know where to get the book, I'm going to reinforce what the hostess said at the book launch. Find her book at www.amazon.com.
Yes. Yes. If you type in the best of all things, Dr. Simone Washington, it will come right up.
Good. Well, Dr. Simone, during the end of the podcast, I usually ask people a round robin questions, which are three questions, and they're usually personal, fun, lighthearted questions.
Okay.
So the first one I have for you is, can you share a time when you had to make a decision that went against your instincts?
The time I had to make a decision that went against my instincts. That's a tough one, friend, because well, I guess I would say some of the boyfriends that I've chosen, over the years, we have those red flags in the beginning, but we're like, oh, that's not so bad. Oh, you know. So women's intuition instincts are always saying red flag, alert, alert, abort, abort. But I just move forward anyways. And I'm like, well, nobody's perfect. And, let's learn more about this to see where this is stemming from. Ultimately, not ending well. And so I've learned, even if it's a pink flag, take it very seriously.
She said a pink flag.
Yes.
If there's one inkling or ounce of red, pinkish, turn the other way. All
Abort,
right.
abort.
Abort mission. Abort mission. The next one is, can you share a time when you had to improvise or think on your feet at work?
Improvise. Think on your feet. Yes. So, my thoughts and the words that sometimes come out of my mouth are not appropriate or politically correct for work. And so I always have to think on my feet on how to rephrase, reframe, to be able to say what I want to say, advocate in the way that I want to advocate, but not allow my words to overshadow the point that I'm trying to make.
Mm.
And so that has been fun to learn, to be able to give a read without getting fired.
I, I could totally relate. Totally relate. What, and then last question. What is the most important lesson you've learned about leadership?
The most important lesson that I've learned about leadership is to value those you are leading. And the way that you value those you're leading is by listening to them, being intentional about hearing what they have to say, and actually taking some of the advice that they give. Because at the end of the day, the people that you are leading have value and they are the subject matter expert at whatever it is that they're doing. And so there are things that they know better and more than you do. And to be a great leader is to use your resources uh, to the maximum capacity. And so that means to value the people that you're leading, listening, and actually taking the suggestions and the advice that they give.
What are some of the characteristics of a good leader? I know I said three, but I just thought I'd dive into this.
Sure. Characteristics of a good leader is to understand that you do not know everything that there is to know, and that you are a stronger leader by the team that you have around you, and that you're selecting the team based on what things that are not your strengths, but are their strengths. And so, as a team, you are a powerful force. Always speaking positively over those that you lead, always highlighting the good that they do, and always being willing to give positive feedback, positive reinforcement, being able to reframe what may seem negative and just turn it into something positive, a learning opportunity, some way to help others grow. Because if your team isn't growing with you, then it is a reflection on how good of a leader you are or are not.
I hope you all heard that. If your team isn't growing, it is definitely a reflection of who you are. So thank you for that, Dr. Simone. So before we go, I'd like for you to leave people with one thing that you want them to remember when they walk away from this podcast, and then also share with them what new things that are coming up, and then where they can find you.
Yes. So, one thing that I would like everyone to walk away with is to use my story as inspiration, that you too have a story to tell, and that there are people waiting to be blessed by your story. And so, whatever apprehensions you have about telling your story, just think about all of the lives that you will be impacting by telling your story, and use that as motivation to go forth in finding your voice and and writing in your journal to get that story out. And you can find me on all social media: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, at Simone Washington. And just link with me, connect with me to stay updated with all of what's coming up.
Oh yeah, and I'm gonna throw out Dr. Simone's Black Friday,
Yes.
which I hate that she didn't tell me this. Hello, but you get free shipping today if you order her book. So
Yes. If you go to Kiyasi Tech, KiosiTechSolutions.com and order the book there. Then you can get free shipping today only.
Well, I don't know what you guys are waiting for. Go get your book. And when you're done, I'd love for you to post a picture of the book. You could possibly win an opportunity to be a guest on the podcast. So, Dr.
Yes.
Simone, thank you so much for sharing your story. It was so impactful. And I pray that wherever your voice is heard, that other people will see themselves in your story. So, thank you again for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for allowing me on your platform to help spread the word. We really do appreciate you, Fran, and people like you that help us elevate the conversation. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, you have a wonderful Friday, and then we'll connect with you at another time. Bye.